It's early on Thursday evening. So wherever you're in the world you're logging on from, a very warm welcome to you. So I invite you now just to come to an upright but comfortable sitting position. And in this class we do a mixture of meditation and some basic instruction as to how to meditate. But it's a practical class, so we will be sitting for quite a period. So just a few words to you all if you're new to meditation. If you are sitting for the first time and you're sitting on the floor, do make sure that your hips are higher than your knees, unless you're ultra flexible. And if you're sitting in a Western chair, as many of us are, just ensure that you have a stable position and your feet are planted firmly on the floor, so that the soles of your feet are touching the floor and you're not cross-legged, or your feet are not splayed out to one direction or the other. Let's just start for a few minutes by just arriving here in this online space, in the room that you're in. And in whatever way works for you, just take a moment or two, just a few minutes, just to settle, allow your consciousness to drop, and just arrive where you are. You may be here in body. Where is your mind? So the invitation is to quite deliberately allow yourself to settle, slow down, put aside the things you've been dealing with earlier in the day or this afternoon. And just take this time for yourself. It's perhaps useful to close our eyes to help us settle, but if that doesn't work for you, just have a soft gaze at the floor and just immediately in front of you. Half closed eyes, something like that. And just deliberately allow your attention to drop. And if you've just logged on in the last minute or two, my name's Richard and I'm taking the class this week. Next week it'll be Ajahn Subhaddo. Just continuing our settling practice. I invite you now to bring your attention to the soles of your feet. Just allow your attention to drop. Really just feel the contact with the floor, or if you're sitting on the floor, just feel your ankles and your shins and perhaps your knees touching the floor. So just the points of contact, that feeling of being supported, resting on the ground. And if you need to adjust your posture at any time, if you're getting uncomfortable, please feel free to do so. Don't sit and suffer. These practices are designed to take us beyond suffering, not to increase suffering. And so I invite you to feel your sitting bones on the chair or the cushion. Feel the pressure, the contact, how they're supporting the weight of your torso. And just notice if you have an image of them, if you're thinking about them, and see if you can just nudge your attention directly into feeling. What's the sensation of sitting? Now I invite you to bring your attention to your back. Just check that it's reasonably upright, not rigidly straight, but reasonably upright. And just feel your back, perhaps the contact with the chair. And just feel how your torso is supported by your spine. And then I invite you to bring your attention to your neck and your head. And just check that they're nicely aligned with your spine, and your spine with your pelvis, so everything's in a nice upright column. And just feel how your neck is supporting the weight of your head, how it's resting on your shoulders. Just notice any tension in that area. And again, I invite you to notice whether you have images or whether you're thinking about your neck and your head. And just see if you can locate your attention in the feeling, the sensation. And then I invite you to bring your attention to the crown of your head and just lengthen a fraction towards the sky. So you're just pulling your spine up into a nice upright column. And then I invite you to bring your attention to the whole of your body, from the crown of your head to the soles of your feet, taking in your spine and your sitting bones, just getting an overall sense of your body just resting here on this seat in this room. Feel the clothes on your skin surface and the air on your hands and your face. And then I invite you to bring your attention to your mouth and just feel your tongue inside your mouth. Feel the wetness of your saliva, perhaps the sense of touch of your tongue and your teeth or the roof of your mouth. And then just taste whatever there is to taste in your mouth. It may be the tea or the coffee you drank earlier, or it may be nothing. What's the sense of taste in your mouth right now? If it's nothing, what's the taste of nothing? Now I invite you to bring your attention to your nose and just feel the flow of air over the rim of your nostrils. Cool on the in-breath and slightly warm on the out-breath. And just notice what you smell. Perhaps you have some flowers in your room, or you have lit incense before the beginning of this session. Perhaps you're wearing some scent. Or perhaps there's the smell of nothing. So what are you smelling right now? What is the air bringing to you? And again, notice if you have an image of your nose or the air flowing. And see if you can just shift a fraction into the sense of smell. What's the direct experience of the sense of smell right now for you? And now I invite you to bring your attention to your eyes. Just leave your eyes closed if they already are. And if you're looking through half-opened eyes at the floor, just keep them as they are. What is the light coming to you? What are you seeing? Even through closed eyelids, we can still see some of the light in our room or from the computer screen. So just notice what you're seeing. Notice if you have projections from your mind onto the back of your eyelids. And see if you can distinguish between those and the light from your room. And now I invite you to bring your attention to your ears. What are you hearing right now? What are the sounds coming to you? So I invite you for the next few minutes just to listen and receive. But see if you can do so without getting entangled in the sounds that come to you. So just being open and receptive. What are you hearing right now? And now I invite you to bring your attention back to your body and the sense of touch. So just get an overall sense of your body again, from the crown of your head to the soles of your feet, taking in your back, your spine, your sitting bones, the points of contact with the floor. Just feel the clothes resting on your skin surface and the air in your hands and your face. Just an overall sense of your body. So please feel free to stretch and move and adjust your posture, and perhaps have a sip of water. And just notice how you feel. As both of my colleagues that take this class say, when you come out of a formal sit, there's no need to stop noticing, so keep noticing. So how are you feeling right now? Just to say a few words, especially to anyone that logged on after we began. My name's Richard, and I'm taking the class this week, and next week it will be Ajahn Subhaddo, and the week after that it will be Colin Ash. And just to say what we've done so far in this session is we've done a basic body scan. Now I use the senses when I do a body scan for a variety of reasons, but just to say where we've been, we started with the sense of touch, just exploring our groundedness, touching the floor, the sense of being seated, just a sense of bodily posture, an overall awareness of the body. And then we worked through the different senses, the sense of taste, sense of smell, sense of sight, and the sense of hearing. And then we finished again with the sense of touch, an overall sense of the body sitting here on this seat in this room. And one of the reasons we do that is because bringing our awareness of any particular sense into the foreground of our consciousness helps us be in the present moment. And that's a really important, essential part of meditation practice. It's just learning to inhabit the present. There's so much of our waking life. We have just an endless sequence of thoughts, mostly about the past or the future, and quite often not about what's going on right now. And that's one of the directions of practice that we emphasize, certainly in basic meditation, is just learning to inhabit our direct experience in the present moment. One of the teachers who almost all Buddhists refer to, certainly in the 20th century and the 21st century, was Thich Nhat Hanh, who died just about a month ago. And I dedicated last week's session to him, and I'd like to dedicate this week's session to him. We learnt so much Okay, I'm terribly sorry. I lost my internet connection. So I'm back with you now. I do have a backup, but it takes me a couple of minutes to get that up and running. So really sorry about that. These things happen. It's called the dukkha of technology. Dukkha being a Pali word that means unsatisfactoriness. So we can learn from every experience. I was just saying before that little interruption, which I hope didn't disturb you too much, that many of these teachings of Thich Nhat Hanh are present in these practices, and learning to inhabit the present moment is a key part of that. One of the things that I emphasize in my meditation, and I'd like to share that with you, is how important compassion for ourselves and kindness for ourselves is in our practice. So many of us have been brought up with quite self-critical habits of thought, and we live in a world where we're continually assessed and graded and set targets to achieve. And we've come through education systems where we've been examined and marked many decades, and that lives with us. And we find ourselves engaging in these practices, and in a subtle way, many of us, when we start these practices, we can be quite critical of ourselves without even noticing it. So to give you examples, you're sitting in meditation and you're placing your attention on the body, the breath, and thoughts come in as they do. This is the nature of the mind. And you find yourself with a subtle thought that goes something like, I shouldn't be thinking these thoughts. I should be absolutely, completely locked on to the body or the breath or whatever it is whatever the object of meditation is. And of course, it's not like that. And these practices, in their essence, are very gentle and kind and compassionate. And it's not about eliminating thought or blanking your mind out or having a completely empty space. It is about having choice about where you place your attention. And we're being encouraged to continually choose and re-choose to locate our attention on an aspect of the body, senses, the breath, something that brings us into the present moment. And if we can do this in a way that supports us, takes care of us, then the whole practice has a flow to it. It's easier. And we move away, we re-educate our minds to have a gentler approach to ourselves and to life. So many of us have had 50, 60 years of our thoughts going into quite quickly into a default mode that is quite self-critical. And I hope that by practicing meditation and I can sort of unlearn those quite damaging neural pathways that have been established in my brain. And I hope that your engagement with basic meditation practice can do that for you as well. So what I'm encouraging here is really to begin your practice with a really kind attitude to yourself. How would I, if I was teaching a young child, how would I treat them? Would I be very critical, or would I be gentle and encouraging? What's the best learning mode? And education neuroscientists tell us these days that quite simply a gentle, compassionate approach works best for pretty much everyone. If you're human, that's the route to take. And Thich Nhat Hanh was very strong in his emphasis of how mindfulness itself is a compassionate act. one of his teachings that I remember so well was that just by paying attention to the breath and noticing its richness, its fullness, the actual miracle of breathing, that in itself is an act of care and kindness to our whole being, when we appreciate not just the sensation, but the actual significance of the sensation and our awareness of it, and what a miracle that is. And he talked about the miracle of mindfulness, and that was his major contribution to Buddhist thought in the West, certainly, was the book, The Miracle of Mindfulness. And what he meant by that was just that, but paying attention, being mindful of the sensation of breathing and being alive, is an act of compassion and care and kindness to ourselves. And it's quite radical to actually understand that we tend to sort of departmentalize a lot of meditation practices, and this is insight practice, this is breathing practice, this is metta practice, but in reality, they all have one direction, which is to bring us into the present moment and to bring us into this connection, this mindful connection with ourselves and to the world around us. So let's do some work with the breath. And just to mention that with breathing practice, there are many aspects to the breath. One of the reasons it's so important in meditation practice is because it's always there. It's quite, it's ever present. We don't have to put on a special tape or log on, put on a CD or anything like that. We always have the breath with us. So that's one aspect of why the breath is so useful. The other aspect is that it's completely neutral. Every human being has breath. From the moment we're born till the moment we die, we are breathing. That's what it means to be human. So the breath is completely neutral. It has no theology attached to it. It has no concepts or ideas to get hung up on. It's got no, it just is. And it carries our consciousness. So it's a really useful tool in meditation practice. The other aspects to mention about the breath are just one thing. Now, traditionally, when the breath is introduced to people begin meditation, the teachers will say, you can find the breath at the rim of the nostrils, in the chest area, or in the abdomen. So they give you a choice of one of those three places. And the usual invitation is, where do you feel it most easily? Where does it occur for you most easily? And that is quite a good route in. It's just to spend a few moments when we begin to sit with the breath, of just exploring, where can I pick up that sensation of the breath most easily? And again, it's important to emphasize, if you're really new to practice, is that we leave the breath alone. We don't alter the breath in any way. We don't breathe deeply. We don't breathe shallowly. We just notice what the breathing is in this moment. So that's another beautiful aspect to it. It is as it is. And that teaches us a great deal. But having mentioned these three places, I would also say, and I think this is quite important to mention this, is that some people find it easier just to have an overall sense of breathing, so not be particularly located in one part of the body. So it's quite easy to feel the breath, say in the chest area. You can just feel, if you put your hand on your chest, you can just feel the rise and the fall with the in and the out breath. It's quite an obvious sensation, that sensation of movement. The same with the abdomen and the rim of the nostrils. These are quite sort of useful places. Some people find them easy, some people find them more hard, and you may have a particular preference for one over the other. But some people just find an overall sense of the body just breathing, the whole column of the breath from the rim of the nostrils right through into the depths of the abdomen, where the muscles will involuntarily do the work of breathing. So that's another option. So what are we talking about here with the breath? I mean, there's the air and there's the movement. Well, we're doing roughly what we did in that first sit, is we're locating our attention and repeating this with the movement of the breath. The movement, the sensation of the movement of the breath, we bring into the foreground. So in the periphery of our attention, we can have all these thoughts that arise, but we are continually, repeatedly, just shifting our attention back to the sensation of the breath, so that that is in the foreground. And that's the basic invitation. And it's useful to bear in mind, Thay's teaching here is that just knowing that we're breathing and that we're alive, this is self-care. Just appreciating, hey, I'm alive, I'm breathing. I've got this breath, this air that's coming into me and giving me life. And that's miracle. And that is an act of compassion for ourselves. And I think that's a really useful reminder before we begin our practice. So I invite you now, having talked a little bit about the breath, just to bring yourself again into your upright sitting position. And just as we did to begin with, just ground yourself, lower your attention, get that sense of being supported by the floor. And just for a moment, just briefly, just contact the whole of your body, your back, your spine, your sitting bones. Groundedness with the contact with the floor. Just get an overall sense of your body. Closing your eyes or looking down at the ground, the floor in front of you. Find a neutral position for your hands in your lap or on your thighs, upturned or downturned. Just something comfortable where you don't have to think about what to do with them. And then just notice the sensation of the breath. So breathing in, I'm aware of my body. And breathing out, I release tension from my body. So just breathe in and notice you're aware of your body and your breath. And breathe out and just let the tension, the stress go with the breath. And just know quite consciously that this is an act of self-care. This is an act of kindness. For this being in this room right now. And if you find yourself thinking, thoughts are coming in, you haven't made a mistake. That's perfectly natural and normal. Just notice them. And then just with kindness and care, relocate your attention with the sensation of the breath. So just noticing where you are now. Where's the breath? Where is your mind? Just gently, with care and kindness, relocate your attention with the sensation of the breath. So just noticing where the breath is now. Where do you sense the breath most easily? In your abdomen, in your chest area, at the rim of the nostrils? Or is it an overall sense of the column of the breath? And again, just noticing what the mind is doing. The flow of the thoughts. Just see if you can, with kindness and care, just relocate your attention. Knowing this is a compassionate action. So please feel free to stretch and move and take a sip of water, readjust your posture. If anything has got uncomfortable whilst you've been sitting, please do feel free to stretch it out. So you can just spend a moment or two noticing how you are again. And also perhaps just appreciating that you've just completed another meditation session to within an hour and a bit. And I really appreciate the seriousness with which you've engaged with this. I guess most of us here who come to a meditation class, we come with a variety of motives. And I guess one of them would be, how can I engage in meditation when things are not going so well in my life? For many of us, it's relatively easy to sit in meditation when things are going smoothly. But most meditators, certainly at a class like this, are not just fair weather meditators. We want to be able to sit whatever's going on. And that's one of the basic teachings, is yes, it's easy enough to sit when life is going smoothly. But how can I sit when things are not going so smoothly, when life is difficult, when problems are looming large in my life? And one of the questions that came up for me in a recent class I was teaching was, goes like this: you're continually talking about coming home to the present moment, about taking refuge in the present, about not getting engaged in the past or in the future. And many of these practices are designed just to locate our attention in the present moment. And as I was saying earlier, there is, in one sense, this is an act of self-care. But the question went, what if the present moment is unbearable? What then? How safe and secure can I feel with a teaching that says, come home to the present moment? And that's an interesting one, isn't it? Because most of us, we listen to the teachings and we intuitively know there is something about bringing our attention into the present moment that has a wholesome, healing quality to it. It's a sort of intuitive. You just engage in any part of a meditation process, that feels right. But then what happens when the present is really difficult? Well, the teaching goes something like this in regard to this question, is that there are two kinds of situation. One is the situation I've just described, where things are going relatively smoothly. And then when you breathe in and you bring your mind home into your body and you establish some peace in that moment, it's quite easy in that situation to notice the refreshing, healing qualities of the breath and being in the present. We have a lot of conditions available to us for feeling joy and happiness just by being alive. And we can notice that. And that was part of what I was encouraging you to feel, just by this miracle of being alive with the breath. There's a sort of joy in that. There's happiness there. I'm just alive. That's wonderful. So that's sort of one sort of condition, if you like. It's the fair weather condition. And most of us, if you've listened to the weather forecast this evening, you'll know there's a storm coming. I don't know where most of you are here in London. On the Met Office website, it's predicted that by 11 a.m. tomorrow, the wind speed is going to be something like 70 miles an hour. That's just in London. If you're on the coast somewhere, well, it could be a lot higher. So there is a storm coming, and that's a physical storm out there. But what happens when there's a storm in here, an inner storm of our emotions? How do we sit with that? And what if there is real pain in our body in the present moment, pain in our mind in the present moment? How then are we to engage in these practices of being in the present moment? Now, the natural thing, of course, is we're all human. We don't like that. We don't like pain. We try to run away. We try to escape it, distract ourselves from it. We live in a society that's full of consumption. Many people just, engaging. Shopping therapy is the least damaging of these sorts of distractions, but the sort of the genre I'm talking about. This is where addictions arise. We do things to distract ourselves from the pain of the present moment. Anything but actually be present. But the teachings here are quite clear that all these things, they won't last. Distracting yourself is a very short-term route out of pain. And the teachings are quite clear on this. And Thich Nhat Hanh was always emphasizing this, was how there is an encouragement to turn towards the pain, to turn and investigate it, to actually be open to it, not to run away. That takes courage. That takes a certain intention. And that's a tough teaching. And we need to acknowledge that. But the breath is where this is so useful, because as I was saying earlier, the very act of locating your attention with the breath is an act of kindness, of self-care. And if we can learn, even in the midst of pain, emotional turmoil, or physical pain, to repeatedly relocate our attention with this miracle of awareness that is the breath, then we have the possibility of finding a new relationship with that pain. If we run away, it's a short-term, very unsatisfactory fix. It'll find us again. It'll re-emerge. Distractions, addictions, consumption never really solves the problem. That's quite easy to see. They're short-term fixes. But in the long term, by turning towards embracing our pain, opening to it, exploring it, investigating it, using the breath, this miracle that is the breath, with full awareness and consciousness that this act of breathing and being mindful of our breath is an act of compassion and self-care, then we can be present for ourselves. If we have a child in our care, or a creature, a puppy or a kitten, and that little young being is suffering, we would take care of it. We would comfort it. We would hold it. We would stroke it. We would give it care and compassion. Likewise with ourselves. We are encouraged in these teachings is to, if you like, parent ourselves, take care of ourselves. And the breath is one such means of doing this. Being mindful of the present moment is one such way of taking care of ourselves, bringing compassion and kindness to this being that's sitting here and suffering right now. We are no less deserving than any young creature that might be in our care. And we can take care of ourselves through meditation. We can learn to actually offer ourselves care and compassion. And yes, there are specific practices, and when I next take a class with the Buddhist Society, I will introduce a metta practice. I'm sure Colin may do so in a few weeks' time. But just to know that by engaging in these practices that bring us into the present moment, we are being compassionate, we are taking care of ourselves. There's a lot of, when we're in pain, when we're suffering, one of the great fears is of being overwhelmed by it. We can't cope with it. And the teachings here are very encouraging, because what they're saying is, it may feel really big and huge, like this storm that's coming tomorrow. And we have a place of refuge. Just as when a storm is coming, we're encouraged to batten down the hatches. I have an Australian friend that tells me that in North Queensland, in Australia, when there's a cyclone approaching, they are given cyclone home kits, which are basically a set of instructions about how to take care of your property and yourself in the midst of a storm. And we too can have our own cyclone care kit. And one of that is just learning to be compassionate and kind to ourselves, whatever is going on, whatever the pain, whatever the suffering, whatever the approaching storm. We can learn that actually we can care for ourselves in this situation. And these practices, this capacity to sit with, to be with whatever's going on, this is the teaching. This is where the learning takes place. So instead of running away, instead of distracting ourselves with TV, consumption, addictions, whatever it might be, we can learn just to be with that emotion, be with that feeling. There's in a lot of these the instructions in basic meditation, there are two things that are said: notice and let go. Notice and let go. And the noticing is actually the easy bit. The letting go is often quite hard. And I would offer you just one little tweak to that instruction: is if you can't let go, let be. Just let it be, whatever it is. You don't have to do anything with it. It doesn't have to go. You can just notice it and be with it, and then it will change in and of itself. And the breath is always present. It's always a place that you can go to know. Just be with whatever's going on. Notice this breath. Not the next one, not the one before, but this one. I've talked for quite a while. Any questions? That was the answer to one question that came to me earlier in the week. But does anyone have any questions? If you'd like to put them into the chat, that's fine. If not, unmute yourself and you can speak. I'm sure Wangdu will allow you to do that. Okay, thank you. Probably given you quite a lot to chew on anyway this evening, so if there are no questions, that's absolutely fine. Yeah, I think it was Ajahn Subhaddo who said a few weeks back that most teachers only have one thing to say, and they just say it in a variety of different ways. I think that's really true in many ways, and it's what we find in our own practice, what works, what we find most helpful, and I think, this is something that you can experiment with your own practice. Just see what works for you with all of these teachings. Where do you find your way in? It's not one size fits all as well with these teachings. It's not thou shalt do this. It's just see if this works. And if it does, fine. If it doesn't, move on. Listen out for the next teaching. See if that works. And there is a saying in Dharma practice that if you find your way in, if you find one door into practice, one door into the Dharma, the whole thing opens up for you. And I think that really is true. So you don't have to find every way in, just find your way in, and then the whole thing is open for you. And I think that's really worth bearing in mind. Yeah. So I want to thank you all very much. This is, for your seriousness and your attentiveness, and with which you engage with the meditations and this practice. I really appreciate it. And the Buddhist Society really appreciates you coming to join this online Sangha. So you've done a lot this evening, and I wish you well. I'll just finish with the closing homage. The Lord, the perfectly enlightened and blessed one, I render homage to the Buddha, the Blessed One. The teaching so completely explained by him, I bow to the Dharma. The Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well, I bow to the Sangha. So thank you all very much for joining. I wish you well, and do take care in the storm tomorrow.